Hi guys, Jamie from Boxing Life, and welcome to another episode of Fight Thoughts. Today I've got another special guest on the channel with me, and it is Francis Fisher from the Fisher Boxing Academy. How's it going, Francis, man? Thanks
Yes,
so much
sir.
for coming on. It's been a while.
Good. Long time coming.
Yeah,
My
yeah, we've
pleasure.
we've been meaning to do this for a while. So I first started following you on TikTok. Must have been about couple of years ago now, but always
Uh,
loved your opinion on the sport and so valuable as well with your content as well. So, like I said, great to have you on finally, man.
No, thank you so much. Appreciate it. It's
Awesome,
good to be on.
awesome. And obviously, we've got the reaction from the weekend. Some big fights were taking place. Obviously, Canelo Alvarez was on, and Inoue versus Nery as well. So we'll touch on those fights first. But I guess it makes sense to start off with Canelo Alvarez versus Munguia, and it's pretty
Most
vintage.
definitely.
It's pretty vintage performance from Canelo in the end. I thought first few rounds probably. I thought Munguia was looking pretty good behind the jab. Uh, but typical Canelo fashion, taking his time, downloading what's in front of him, and Munguia, for me anyway, just got way too confident, started standing in the pocket with Canelo, and obviously that fourth round he got the knockdown, and from that point on it was pretty much Canelo just running the show. I felt, and Munguia, he did held himself. He did pretty well for the majority of the fight. He tried to take it to him. He actually put together some decent combinations. I felt, but overall Canelo was just too good. But yeah, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that fight, Francis.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think the biggest thing with Canelo Alvarez is if you stand in front of him, you're done for. I think with his ability to get around the guard, his ability to punch the body, and there's a great part of that fight where he's gone to the body, then he's whipped it up and gone to the head. And I think it's so reminiscent of that Mexican style where you're getting around the guard, hitting the ears, hitting the body,
Yeah.
even the sort of the one he did Rocky Fielding with, where he stabbed the body shot up the middle as well. I think his ability to get you when you stand in front of him is so dangerous. And I think that's why the likes of a Bivol or a Mayweather did well, is because they used their feet, they
Yeah.
made themselves move, they weren't there to be hit. And I think, like you said, with Munguia, too much time spent in front of him. Probably the first time deer in the headlights, fighting someone like the likes of Canelo. And I think you make that
Yeah.
mistake of thinking you can sort of go gun for gun with Canelo, and I just don't think it works.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
100% agree with you
that'd
there.
be my
Like,
kind of take on it.
yeah, when I was doing I had a breakdown on my Patreon. I was doing an analysis on just the lead up to the knockdown, and even just throughout the whole fight as well. When Canelo was in the pocket with Munguia, like, Munguia was getting off his combinations, but it was just the way Canelo was able to just parry the jab, block either hand, and then you know
Hmm.
just use waist movement to maneuver out of the left,
Oh, it's
out of
phenomenal.
the way of the left hook, and then able to counter him. It was just beautiful stuff from him. And like, I understand the criticism about maybe Munguia in this fight, but he's an undefeated champion at the end of the day. He obviously, it was when he was at 154
Sure, yeah.
pounds, but I just felt, this was still going to, it was a good test for Canelo anyway. And I guess
Hmm.
some people were suggesting that potentially it could just be a warm up for Benavidez. Now, I don't think that's going to happen personally. I just kind of get the vibe of
Mm.
Canelo. He's not interested in it. But yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Do you think we'll ever see Canelo Benavidez one day?
I think Benavidez is a dangerous one. Big, strong. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen some of the sort of the size that man gets. I don't know what he must be outside of training. I mean, even if you looked at
Hmm.
him as a kid, he's ginormous. So
Yeah.
the problem being is the further you go up, the harder you're going to have a time being, especially with someone like a Benavidez, hard, strong, powerful, aggressive. I think it's dangerous. I think Canelo has, from what I understand, almost priced himself out of wanting to fight someone like Benavidez, which is never a good idea. But I'd love to watch it. I think I'd prefer to watch a Bivol rematch just because I feel like
Yeah.
Canelo's kind of gone, well, I didn't win that one, so screw it, I'll just fight other people. And I believe he even made a comment in one of the press conferences about not fighting Mexicans, but then he goes and fights a Mexican, so that was kind of strange. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
That.
tough one.
Yeah.
I'd pay to watch it. Sure.
Yeah. And what about um, Canelo versus Crawford? Do you think that's a mismatch, or do you
I
think
mean,
Crawford would have any chance against Canelo?
I think it's one of those things, and I think you see it when someone is so much bigger. I think you're just
Yeah,
going to struggle. Crawford is exceptional. I think he's. Me and my brother talk about this often. I think he's one of the best finishers in the game. I can't remember which round it is. 12th round or 11th round, he finished a guy, a Mexican guy. You probably know the name better than I would. And he finishes this guy, and I think he's down. They tell him he's down. And he comes back and gets him. But against someone like Canelo, who's so
mhm.
big, I just don't know. Stopping powers is going to be an issue. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, I agree. I think it's like I could see Crawford potentially boxing from the outside, just being tricky,
Hmm.
you know, moving his feet. He's obviously he can fight as a southpaw or orthodox as well. I think that poses a problem, but realistically, I just think it's just the size of Canelo, you know, being, you know, if it was
Yeah,
to
for
happen
sure.
at 168 pounds, and Crawford, you know, we don't know how he would handle being at that weight. Would he gas out, or could he even handle the power of Canelo? It's just one of those but that's the intriguing question about it. But it's two pound for pound guys at the end of the
Absolutely.
day, and I think fans would tune
No, I'd
into
watch
it.
it.
But uh, you know, would it be a bit like the Charlo fight, maybe the Canelo Charlo fight? I don't know, but we'll see what happens. But we'll move on to the other big fight that happened. I believe it was Monday. I think it was. Yeah, it was Monday,
Sure thing.
and we had the monster Inoue versus Luis Nery, and shockingly, he was knocked down in that first round. I couldn't believe it when when it actually happened. I was up on my
No, for
feet,
sure.
couldn't believe it, and I just think it was just an unfortunate position for him. You know, he just kind of got caught at the wrong moment, and but he composed himself. I felt, and after that, you know, he absolutely dominated the fight. Just incredible, and an incredible finish as well. Two knockdowns as well. In the, I believe it was the third and the fifth, I think. But yeah, it was just a amazing
Possibly,
performance.
yeah.
So, what was your thoughts on that, Francis?
It's a weird tangent, but it reminds me of Linares when he fought Lomachenko. And it's like someone can be exceptional as Inoue is, and people will still bash the guy. But when they come back from being knocked down to win in such fashion, I think that says so much more about somebody than the skill within itself. You know, when you use the term champion, it goes further than just boxing ability. It's kind of their ability to get back off the canvas, have adversity, come back, and I think that in itself was interesting. Also interesting that someone who is as good technically as Inoue is gets themselves in a position where they get knocked down. I think his feet were a little bit more underneath him than they could have been,
Yeah.
especially in a first round when you're cold. I think you can take a shot like that, you know.
Hmm.
So I think it says more about him the fact that he got back up and put the beating that he did, and then stopping him. I think it says even more of how exceptional the guy actually is, and that guy's a monster.
Yeah.
And what I took away from it is everything that he does is refined. It's so small. Your left hook comes from the perfect position. Your right hand, everything is perfect. It's so refined and good. And I think that again, the knockdown says more about him. I think being knocked down was almost a good thing. It says more
Yeah.
about him than anything could have done. You know, so I'm a huge fan and always will be. So a
Yeah.
fantastic fight.
I know it was brilliant. I felt just for the knockdowns themselves, in my kind of pre-analysis, you know, just because I knew of Luis Neri, I hadn't watched him too much, but you know, one of the things he has is just looping left hook he throws, and
Mm.
it's it's obviously a knockdown Inoue on the inside, but he was trying to land that jab, kind of overhand left hook, and
Hmm.
obviously Inoue caught him with a counter left hook as he just kind of backed off, and that in itself, just the timing and the technique to
Unbelievable.
be able to land that punch was just exceptional. And
You must be familiar. There's a pull right hand that he landed in one fight. Remind me. I can't remember the name of which fight it would have been.
oh,
Yeah, guy throws a little bit of a lazy jab. He punches over the top of it, and it's there's a video of him doing it in the back in the dressing room. I can't remember which fight it is exactly, but it
Was it
shows just how well
Maloney?
refined and how,
I think it was Maloney.
quite possibly,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And
and
it,
yeah,
it
and
just shows you, like you say, just how technically good.
yeah, he's just practicing on that one punch, and then
Hmm.
come the fight, bang, gets him.
Yeah,
But yeah, you're right. It's like
it's.
sorry, off you go.
I would say it's again. I'm on a tangent. A lot of things. There's a fantastic video of Conor McGregor practicing the exact punch he knocked Jose Aldo with, and it's always, I think, the great example of a champion is someone who's able to take the exact thing they've used in training and put it under the bright lights. And I think Inoue is a great example of being able to perform in the domain of the place where you need to be. And I think that showed more than anything the right mindset, the fortitude, all the things you ask of a champion. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
weird tangent, but just a great
No,
example of
no,
that specific shot being thrown.
no, definitely. No,
Yeah,
I agree with you there. I think it's like, obviously just watching his training, it's so, he's just, the fundamentals are just all there. He's always just practicing the,
yeah,
the basic fundamentals to perfection. And
yeah.
just, you see those videos of him just, throwing his jab, just using his jab, and the
1,000
sharpness.
times.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that Bruce Lee quote about, I don't fear the man that's, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's,
I fear the man that's thrown 1,000 different kicks. I fear the man that's thrown the kick the same 1,000 times. Something
yes,
I know
that
what
one.
you
Yeah,
mean.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You're paraphrasing, but yeah, no, that's definitely it.
definitely.
Yes, along those lines. But and then even I remember I did a video on Inoue's training like a few years back now, and I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Forrest Gump, where he's practicing
Yeah,
the
for
ping
sure.
pong, and he's just doing in the
Hmm.
movie, he's
Against
just
the
doing the
wall.
same against the wall.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, and that just reminds me of that, just the way he's just perfected
Hmm.
like these single punches when it comes under the bright lights and that's when it matters, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and then I
I think
guess
the thing.
sorry, I
To
forgot.
No, no, I was just to say the thing just to sort of increase the point. If you watch the Canelo fight from the weekend, before he lands the left hook and the right uppercut, he pulls back off Munguia's right hand, and it's exactly the training when you see him on like the aquabag with the noodles and stuff
Yeah,
with Reynoso. It's the exact same techniques and repetition. And I think that's a great example of Inoue is just the willingness to do the same thing day in day out and get the result through doing so. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
same with the Forrest Gump analogy. I think is a great.
Yeah. And see, when you're training your guys, Francis, are you kind of doing the same thing as well? Just kind of very repetitious technique, like when
Yeah,
you're doing working on a specific drill, are you kind of you just keep working on it for a single session, or do you try and
it's a very
mix in
difficult
stuff?
one. It's a difficult one because where I've trained such a variety of people from grassroots up to even I've done a few professional Muay Thai ones, but in the small gloves, so they fight in the 8 or the 4 ounce MMA gloves.
Yeah.
When you take a guy who's fresh to try and get him to sort of refine his mind and think in a certain way is very difficult because a fight at the beginning is erratic. It's hard to sort of calm the mind. But my biggest thing for me is I like balance. I like fundamentals. I think a defense must be inbuilt into everything, punching and then always knowing that you're able to defend yourself afterwards. So for me, it's always the same thing again and again and again and again, and you get the results. And thankfully for me, when I've trained guys and I've taken them to places, someone will say, "Oh, he's got a great jab," and I think it's because we've practiced it 1,000 times. So
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. It's repetition of the same thing, and that's why I think boxing is so boring, if you want to call it that, because you have to do the same thing day in day out, and that is the annoying part of it, right?
Yeah, definitely. No, I 100% agree with you there. We'll just touch on the actual knockdown itself. This isn't a picture of that, but I just thought, oh, actually, I'll talk about the second knockdown, which I thought was also interesting when I was kind of just analyzing it. Basically, you know, obviously, I know he was feeling pretty confident at that point. He was kind of showboating, and then he started playing possum and going in
Hmm.
the ropes, which he kind of thought, oh, that's quite a dangerous move, considering Nery had just knocked him down in the first round. But I loved the way he was able to set up that double left hook, and if you kind of
Yeah,
obviously you slow it down, I knew he was just able to obviously he went up top first, landed cleanly, and then he kind of changed level, and you could just see Neary
most definitely.
expecting the body punch, and that was enough for the gap for him to throw up top again and then knock him down. It was just honestly, it's beautiful stuff. And then the knockdown, the finish.
Almost esque of a Durrell versus Caleb Plant kind of styled, where
Yeah,
you have the pause and then the left hook
yeah, hundred
kind of
percent.
styled thing.
Yeah, and that kind of that stall just opens the gap just enough. No, yeah, that's a
Hmm.
really good comparison. Actually, I love that was a brilliant knockout as well. Um,
I think that is probably one of the greatest sit, look out with peripheral vision, and throw a left hook I think I've ever seen. I don't think you could set it up better than if you tried. And the fact that Plant's hand was so well planted as he threw that left hook, phenomenal.
oh yeah,
Couldn't be any better if you
I
tried.
know, I know, just perfect technique.
Yeah,
And then the finish from Inoue was also just amazing. Obviously, he was landing some like huge right hands on Neri, and Neri was you kind of, I think I was tweeting when the fight was on, and I said, he needs to land
Mhm.
something sooner. This is over, and
Yeah,
yeah, Inoue is just able to back him up to to the corner, throw a jab, and then just a throwaway left hook, uppercut, right cross. It was just, oh, pure technique.
beautiful.
Wasn't even that powerful, I felt, and he just folded him right in on the ropes. Just beautiful stuff. But yeah,
Most
I
definitely.
going off that performance for me anyway, Francis. I don't know about you. Like for me, he's pound for pound number one. But I can
Yeah.
understand why other people are picking, Crawford or Canelo or Usyk potentially. But it was just he's just so devastating. All and like we were just touching on there, all his punches are just so precise, so sharp and quick and powerful. And
Mhm.
yeah, I'm excited to see what he does next. I think he's going to fight a guy called Sam Goodwin. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but
No, not in particular. No.
uh, so I'd like to see him go up to maybe featherweight or something. I don't know if that could be an
Mhm.
option. There's some big fights there for him, but I think at super bantamweight anyway, I just can't see anyone really competing with him to the standard anyone has so far. Apart from maybe Daenerys has been the only guy that's kind of really challenged him.
Well, Daenerys, what did they fought twice, didn't they? And then the second was it the second one he stopped him? Is
Yeah,
that
second.
correct?
No, he's
Or did he
yeah,
stop him both
second one
times?
he stopped him. Yeah, yeah. Went the full
Because I
12
think
in the
that's a
first.
great example of just because what Daenerys got to be quite old at this point. No, he must be 30 something odd.
I think he's 39 now, and when that fight happened, he was 36.
Yeah, I mean, for the weight, for example, if you're a heavyweight and you're 40 years old, it's not the same as if you're a featherweight and you're 40 years old. Do you know what I mean? So even if you think about Daenerys, how exceptional it is to be able to go 12 rounds of Inoue at the age he is with all the miles on the clock, I think that in itself, but then even more interesting, you come back in the second fight and stop him. So I think that speaks volumes within itself. My thing with going up weight classes and why I think Manny Pacquiao is such an exceptional example is that the heavier the people get, the harder it is to beat them. And that's why the boxing fundamentals become so important because you can't keep knocking people out. Lomachenko is a great example. Obviously, we'll move on to that in a bit.
Yeah.
I think the more the heavier the person is, the harder it is to knock them out. I mean, Lomachenko, when he first came to the scene, was destroying people.
Hmm.
As you go harder and higher, I think it's much harder to sort of, get stoppages.
Yeah.
So, be definitely interesting to see Inoue do it. And I think,
Mhm.
to be honest, I think accolades wise, I think you have to put him at the top, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And just the way he's also winning fights as well. You know,
Exceptional.
unbelievable, unbelievable. We'll move up just as you were talking about Lomachenko. Obviously he's fighting uh, this weekend against Kambosos Jr. In Australia, which is kind of a crossroads fight. Lomachenko has the chance to be a three-time world champion, and Kambosos Jr. He's obviously come off those two losses to Haney, and then I think he also just got a split decision over Maxi Hughes or someone like that. I can't remember if that was him who he
Hmm.
faced, but yeah, should be. I'm just excited to see Lomachenko back in action. Um,
Hmm.
but
Always.
Kambosos have kind of got a soft spot ever since that win over Teofimo Lopez. I've kind of got a soft spot for him, but um, yeah, what's your thoughts on this, Francis? Do you think another kind of dominant performance from Lomachenko, or does Kambosos, kind of actually,
If I
give him a
was a
good
bet,
fight?
if I was a betting man, I'd probably go Lomachenko decision. And the only reason being is I think as he goes up the weight and people get bigger, I think that it's harder to stop people, right? I like a really weird one I sometimes do is I like to watch Kambosos hit the pads. I think he's probably one of the most ferocious punchers when it comes to hitting the body and stuff like that. And it's almost Hatton-esque. I don't know if you kind of get the same comparison.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I think I think just how violent he is and the sounds he makes when he punches stuff. But the problem being is I think that somebody like Lomachenko is so fundamentally good and so difficult to deal with that I just think it's difficult. And when you watch the likes of Kambosos fight Haney and people like that, I think there's there and then there's there, if you know what I mean. And I
Yeah.
feel like unfortunately he falls just below that kind of top
Yeah.
level,
Yeah.
if that makes some sense. Jeff Horn's probably a good example. Fantastic, but just not there.
Yeah. Just not at that level. No, I agree with you as well. I think,
Just
yeah, I think as well, like even for when Kambosos was fighting Devin Haney, I felt, Kambosos is more of a counterpuncher. He's not really that,
Hmm.
and I kind of think he's best when he's on the back foot, as we saw versus Teofimo. Teofimo coming towards him,
Absolutely.
he's able to get off that counter right hand, and um, he's not as effective when he's having to push the pace. And this is where
For sure.
maybe because Lomachenko, he does like coming forward. He's not. That's probably maybe one of the only criticisms about Lomachenko is he's not that great going backwards, and it's kind of
For sure.
interesting to see what Kambosos will do. Will he play into his strengths as a counterpuncher, or will he actually maybe try and push the pace again? I don't know. But interesting to see what Kambosos kind of approaches the fight. But with Lomachenko, I just expect him to come forward,
Matrix.
exactly matrix, put pressure with the jab, try and
Mm.
find angles, set up the backhand. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on there. Um, but do you think if Lomachenko was to, not to take anything away from Kambosos, because he could well win this Saturday, but what would you like to see Lomachenko do next after that fight if he was to win?
See, I'm still upset about the Devin Haney fight with Lomachenko because I thought, as much as people argue, I thought it's painful to see someone get so close but then have it taken away from them. And I don't think if that fight was in another country, he would have lost it.
Yeah,
I think even Haney, when there's a recent it came out the corner of Bill, I think it's Bill Haney talking to Devin Haney, and Devin Haney's almost in a panic about the fact that Lomachenko's left hand's landing. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
yeah, I've seen that
And
clip. Yeah,
in, yeah, in my personal opinion, I felt like Lomachenko had won that fight, and almost at a point where they're almost surprised that he's lost it. But again, I think Lomachenko is exceptional. What were we talking? 300 and was it 300 amateur fights? Something
like
296 beat the same guy he lost to 4 times. Is that right?
yeah, I think it's like 300 and something. Yeah, it's crazy,
Yeah, the
crazy
miles on the
record.
clock for the age he is and whatnot. But I still see him competing at the top level. I don't see any reason why not. Um, it's just a matter of who do you make him fight next.
Hmm.
You know, um,
What about
maybe
like
maybe a Haney rematch could be on the.
what about like Shakur Stevenson or even a Tank Davis? Do you think that's a possibility, or is that just a
I like
step too far?
Lomachenko. Man. I don't want him to fight Tank Davis. That scares me.
Yeah,
I like him
yeah.
too much.
I know. I could see Loma getting clipped with a big one off Tank. Could be it's a difficult one, isn't
It
it?
just you're probably like me when it comes to boxing. You fall in love with people, and like you've got, I don't know, and now Canelo speaks English is a great example. You just, the character of the person, you fall in love with them, you like them. It's the same with Lomachenko. Just as a person, you can't dislike him, and I would hate to see him get knocked out, especially with the career. Only being knocked down once against Jorge Linares. I would love to see him go out in the right way. Do you know what I mean? So a Tank
Yeah,
Davis scares the life out of me.
yeah. I kind of get that feeling as well that he probably, if he was, I expect him to win this Saturday. And if he is to win,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I think he is like 36, turning 37.
Hmm.
Or is he 35? I think he's the same age as Usyk, I believe. I think he is anyway. He's 36, 37. And you just kind of wonder,
Yeah.
like you said, miles in the clock, is it worth taking on someone like a Tank Davis? Maybe a Shakur Stevenson, a kind of passing the torch fight there. I don't know. But he does have losses on his records. You get some people kind of saying, "Oh, he's not that. He was never that good." But it's like this guy shouldn't even be fighting at lightweight. Never mind,
Hmm.
taking
There's no
actually
one for him
fighting
to
it.
fight left, was there? When he was
Uh,
at There was no one left to fight when he was at a lesser weight, right? He kind of gone through
exactly.
everybody, and people forget what was it? I think it was the contract he made with Bob Arum, right? Where he said, "If you can, I'll sign with you if you can get me a world title fight." Was it within the first fight or two fights? Arguably ends
Yeah,
up winning that fight and then gets robbed. I think it was most times I've ever seen someone get hit below the belt in one fight. It was crazy. So I think people forget just how good that guy is,
yeah.
especially as an amateur. Phenomenal.
Oh yeah. I know. Watching his amateur fights, he's yeah incredible as well. Just the
Something
pace and
else.
the
Yeah.
angles, and it's just unbelievable fighter. But we'll move on. But what's your prediction though before we move on for Lomachenko Kambosos?
Kambosos tough and durable. I'd say you got to go Lomachenko points, and I think that's a reasonable kind of way to go. If I was to put money on it, that's what I'd probably go. And I think when I looked at what I tend to do, and it sounds really strange, is I'll look at the bookies' odds anyway, just to kind of see where they side with. Because I know a lot of people making those
Yeah.
odds do know what they're talking about. Where they have to, you lose a bunch of money, right? So Lomachenko, I think, goes the distance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I'd probably go 12 rounds as well, I think. And we've also got another big one. I'm sure it will happen this time. I'm not fingers crossed it happens. You
Nope.
never know what's going to happen. But
Yeah.
Fury versus Usyk. I've been changing my mind back and forth constantly, but now I think I'm a bit more set on who I think's actually going to win. But I'd love to hear your thoughts first, Francis, and the fight itself, and who are you favoring as well going into this one?
So I think the thing that people have taken a lot too much from is the Ngannou fight with Fury, because you take 2 points from it. From my opinion, I think Fury is either not bothered to train for Ngannou, ends up looking terrible, or you get something that's often talked about where Fury fights to the level of his opponent. When he fought, for example, an Otto Wallin, or when he came back after losing all that weight, he didn't look his best, right? And
Yeah,
then he trains properly and he comes back and he beats Deontay Wilder. I think it's the third one where he puts the best performance on. Can he do it against Usyk? Does he perform in the way he needs to? My only thing, and this is a weird tangent, is I think his tendency to cut. I think he cut in the Ngannou fight, the sparring, and the Otto Wallin fight, if I'm correct,
hmm,
when he's wearing the American shorts. Does that make a difference, especially when you have Southpaw versus Orthodox? Does that eye get targeted more? Small
yeah,
things like that. Um, the size difference, I think, is quite large. I mean, was it Usyk who fought Joe Joyce in the amateurs?
yeah,
You see the size difference between the two people. I think that Fury is just so big and so long and so difficult. He's almost able to lean over and make things difficult.
yeah,
Problem is, Usyk is just so good. Like
y-
Usyk is fundamentally phenomenal. It's this. What's Lomachenko's father name? It's that influence. So I
yeah.
can't picture it. I can't figure it out. I think it really depends how Fury turns up, and if he turns up in good fashion, I think it's a decently not easy night. It's a bad word to use, but I think he can do it. I think he pulls it
Okay,
off.
okay. Do you think you'll?
How about yourself?
So before I was very much Fury. I felt, and maybe this might happen. I don't know. I just feel like if he's to basically tie up Usyk as much as possible when he tries to close the range. And I
Hmm.
feel because you kind of get the feeling the Saudis are kind of favoring Fury as well. Is he going to get away with it depending who the ref is? And I just feel like he's just going to make it messy and horrible whenever Usyk gets into range. However, saying that, I feel, guys have tried to do that to Usyk in the past and they've just not been able to. And who's to say Fury's going to be able to
Hmm.
do that? And the other question as well, could he kind of fight it from kind of long guard instead, kind of using his reach to his advantage? Because he obviously will have it. And especially in
Hmm.
a Southpaw Orthodox kind of matchup, the that's going to be a more, compared to even like someone like Josh or another big guy Usyk's faced in the past, he's still going to have to close more distance to get on the
Yeah.
inside or even to land his left hand. And this is where I'm a bit, it just kind of like you're saying, it kind of depends how Fury approaches it. I don't know. I think Usyk's just so slippery with his footwork. I think he's going to target the body like
Mm.
crazy, which is going to really offset Fury's rhythm. And then that's going to lead for openings up top. However, saying that, it's, like I said, he still needs to get into that range with Fury. So he's going to really have to try and get in that outside position and, to be able to actually hit Fury. Otherwise, Fury's just going to tie him up,
Sure.
hold him, put his weight on him, and yeah, that's where I'm kind of, this is where I keep changing my mind, as you can tell, but I just feel,
Hmm.
with Usyk's footwork, he just makes it so difficult for you to even do that, and the
Yeah.
pressure with his lead hand as
I mean,
well.
I
He's always probing, and it's just, I can't see how Fury kind of is able to hold him on the inside all the time. But yeah, sorry, off you go. What were you going to say?
was really relevant to what you said with when Fury fought. I think it was you must remember the Fury fight when he fought Wilder, and they were talking about how the costume had weighed him down. I think
Oh
what
yeah,
Fury basically did was every time he got near him, he would basically lean on him and allow him to sort of use his weight to tire him out. It's easy to do that to Wilder, who's relatively static. He's kind of where you need him to be. But I think against someone like Usyk, who moves so well and he's angling off and he's doing things, I think it's a lot harder thing to do. The only thing that does interest me is the fact that Fury has the ability to change between Southpaw and Orthodox. And in my opinion, one of the best ways to neutralize someone who's Southpaw is to turn yourself Southpaw.
Yeah.
Recently in the UFC, when Sean O'Malley fought against Chito Vera the first time, basically what Chito Vera would do is he would turn himself into the same stance as O'Malley to not allow him to have that manipulation of stance. It is a great tactic if you can do it. And I think Fury does box well enough out of Southpaw to be able to turn himself into Southpaw to fight with Usyk, if that makes sense. So that could be really interesting as well, I think, to see what he decides to do in terms of tactics and what stance he comes out in.
No, that'll be good. Yeah, no, I'm interested to see if he will actually switch stance, go southpaw. I actually think he will at one point. I think he'll just to kind of show to Usyk, I'm the bigger man. Basically, I can box southpaw or orthodox, and I'm kind of intrigued to see if he actually does that. But yeah, it'd be fun. But then at the same time, Usyk, he switches as well. That's the other thing,
Yeah.
He'll use that kind of Eastern European shift at times, go into an orthodox stance to land his right hand, which I believe is actually his stronger hand. I think that's his dominant hand is
So
right.
From what I understand, I think so both trained originally by Lomachenko's father. From what I understand, I think Lomachenko is also a right-handed southpaw as well. Very similar to Bruce Lee, funnily enough. I don't know if it comes from the same kind of lineage or idea. The right-handed southpaw. I mean, that's a thing within itself, right? I think a big factor that I've always loved about Usyk is you've probably heard as well the 4-minute rounds in sparring in training camp.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get Fury, I mean, especially with the size he is, and if he comes in properly, if you can get him tied, in the later rounds, probably plays, especially for someone who moves as well as Fury does. How does that play out? Is the fitness a big thing? And I think that could make a massive factor as well. So, absolutely.
Yeah. And I guess just the last point I want to make about it is just you could argue the wear and tear of both guys as well. I know people are talking about Fury, but even Usyk, he's been boxing for so long as well, in the amateurs, and then
Sure.
he's had some tough fights as well in the pro game, and obviously Fury, he's been down quite a lot. I guess obviously Wilder, Ngannou, and I think it was Steve Cunningham as well. Obviously,
That's the one. Yeah, big right hand over the top.
yeah, and that was that was an interesting fight as well. Watching that back, and just the way Fury as well kind of changed tactics. He was just like, you know what? I'm just going to make this a messy fight. I'm just going to fight this guy basically. And it worked. And that's kind of where I'm thinking, will he do that against Usyk? Will be interesting to see. But
Most definitely.
yeah. But we'll move on to the next one this month, and that is Taylor versus Catterall, the rematch. I was actually at the fight in Glasgow for the first one.
Oh, wow.
And it was pretty great atmosphere and stuff, but everyone, we obviously, we're all cheering on our countryman, Josh Taylor, but we all knew that he lost that fight. We all said it like in the stands. And, you have to kind of feel sorry for Jack, considering, he would have probably been a undisputed world champion. And yeah, it's a shame, but I think this rematch had to happen for both of them. I think Josh, people would always say that he lost that fight, and for Jack, I think he needs to kind of prove himself once again in this fight. But I don't know if you know too much about them, Francis. I'd probably Josh Taylor rather than Jack. But what's your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, when you said about when we spoke earlier what you were going to sort of talk about, I stuck it on the television and watched it. And first thing that stuck out to me is it's the kind of fight you don't want to have too many times, if that makes some sense. The amount of damage and brain damage that must have come out of that. I think one of the things that was really nice was Catterall's jab. I think the speed that thing comes out is phenomenal. And just small things like the ability to stop Josh Taylor's backhand. I mean, a lot of the time he's slipping on the outside of it, especially with that southpaw orthodox again. But it wasn't necessarily something I watched a lot of, but from what I watched a minute ago, I thought probably not the sort of fight you want to have too many times in your career for longevity's sake. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with Josh Taylor, a bit of a tangent. I became a big fan of Josh Taylor when he fought Ahara Davis. If I remember, I think as Ahara Davis circles out, he hits him with a front hand hook.
Yeah.
I remember I watched a spar live against Ahara Davis and a friend of mine, and I remember just how fantastic Ahara Davis was. Like, you've never seen it, like punching power, fitness from round 1 to 12. And then what Josh Taylor did to him, I thought this guy's exceptional. I know, obviously, accolades before that, but then to sort of see him go on and then to have that fight, it was, it's sort of amazing to see the train of people up to a fight like that. So incredible, really nice to watch.
Yeah, oh man, that would have been amazing. What's O'Hara? Obviously, O'Hara Davis. He was massive puncher, isn't he? And I can imagine that seeing that in the gym. Uh, and the
Man, it was
fact
something.
Josh
Something
Taylor was
special.
able to basically just kind of box rings around him and knock him down. That was actually I highly recommend you guys go and watch that fight if you're watching. Highly entertaining. It's kind of prime Josh Taylor. I think that was probably one of his best fights he's ever had. And
Absolutely.
yeah, but yeah, going into this fight, I'm not really sure because obviously Josh Taylor, he put on an okay performance against Teofimo Lopez. He obviously faded as the fight went on, and Teofimo kind of, yeah, kind of outboxed him in the end. And yeah, I kind of worry for him going into this one personally. I think Jack's just such a difficult kind of fighter to face. You don't really want to. He just makes it a difficult night, especially with that southpaw jab, and he boxes from the outside. He just makes it difficult for you, just from his style,
Yeah.
and from boxing from the outside, using his jab, using his movement, and you could tell in that first fight with Josh Taylor, he was getting so frustrated that he couldn't find his range, and this is where I'm a bit,
Mm.
concerned for him going into this. I don't know how it will turn out. Maybe Josh will put on another performance like O'Hara Davis, but you kind of get the vibe Jack Catterall's going to make this a hard night again.
Yeah, one thing that did stand out to me again from watching the fight only for sort of brief part of time was just how Jack Catcher is one of those people who's just difficult to deal with, awkward. Things come from funny angles. It's the way he moves almost. It's almost unorthodox, and I completely agree. It's almost hard to get the rhythm of the person when they box like that. So it should be definitely a very interesting one to watch.
Yeah. Who's your prediction for that? Do you think Jack Catterall will maybe? I know you need to kind of probably look into it more, but if you had to pick right now.
Don't know, from what you make it out from what you've kind of said, it sounds like it'd be nice to see. Well, it's a countryman for you, but it'd be nice to see Jack Catcher kind of get what he's deserved or what he's owed,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, for me, it doesn't really
be
matter
nice
too
to see.
much. I've always been a Josh Taylor fan, but um, I just kind of get the feeling there. Like we just said, he's a difficult guy, and I could probably see him getting a decision this time. Well, hopefully, you never
Mm.
know. He might get another uh, kind of shock defeat again. We'll see what happens, but we'll move on to the next one, and we've got. On June 1st, the 5 versus 5, Frank Warren's 5 versus Eddie Hearn's 5. Obviously, Bivol versus Beterbiev is now off. Beterbiev got a
Yeah,
knee injury,
meniscus,
which
right?
is, yeah, yeah, that's a real bad injury. And I guess we can touch on that quickly, but I guess that kind of, for me anyway, that affects that fight. It's hard to recover
Mm.
from. And when you consider Bivol is such a good mover, around the ring,
Absolutely.
how's that going to recover for him? And how's he, and part of Beterbiev's style is obviously, cutting off the ring. And yeah, so you kind of wonder, how bad is that injury going to be for him? But what do you think? Do you think, I don't know who you favored going into that before, Francis, but is that going to affect the fight going forward in terms of if it actually does happen now?
Well, something that was interesting to me was when Bivol fought Arthur Lyndon Arthur. Sorry, when Bivol
Lyndon
fought
Arthur,
Lyndon
yeah.
Arthur was
Yeah.
he was able to hurt him but not finish him. And I think one of the things you need against Beterbiev, because he has been hurt before, is the ability to hurt him. If you want to keep a person off you, because that's what Beterbiev, he's basically a blanket where he just smothers you effectively. Can you keep him off you? And I think being able to hit someone like Beterbiev is an important thing. However, how Bivol has the fitness to do what he does in that style for 12 rounds is beyond me. And I think something that is underrated as well as Bivol's defense and guard. I think it was against, is it Craig Richards? He catches a
Craig,
punch and throws it with the same hand, like almost like nothing. Um, I'll probably go Bivol. I think younger,
yeah,
probably has more to it. Moves the feet very well, like you said. But Beterbiev is a horrible human being. I mean, I don't know. They don't build them that strong anymore.
oh yeah,
He's almost
no, no.
Kovalev-esque almost. You know what I mean? Just power in both
Uh,
hands and yeah, scary. So I'd probably go Bivol. I think Bivol has probably the feet for the job. So, but not
yeah.
necessarily the power. That's the only thing that worries me.
Yeah, yeah, that's the same. But the fact I'm just thinking about that, that knee injury. It's like I think I'm kind of not. I was Beterbiev before that injury, but hearing that, I think that's gonna, be a real issue for him going into this fight now. And I'd probably just favor Bivol now. And it's funny, before it
Hmm.
got cancelled, I was totally Beterbiev, but I think that's going to be a problem when they actually fight. But I guess yeah, going back to the 5 versus 5. There's obviously Wilder Zhang. Gonna have to remember everyone that's in this now. Ford versus Ball. Amo Williams versus Shiraz. Willie Hutchinson versus Craig Richards, who you just mentioned. And who's
Hmm.
the last one? Dubois versus Hrgovic. So some good fights in there. I think obviously Wilder Zhang's the kind of showpiece of the event now. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that fight? Do you think, because obviously Zhang lost against Parker in the last fight, but and Wilder
Yeah.
obviously lost to Parker as well. So it's interesting to see how that will play out.
The thing I thought was interesting is in 2012 the London Olympics I went and watched it. So I watched the likes of Joshua Zhang. I think Joshua and Zhang fought in 2012. Yeah, they did, didn't they? You had Joe
Yeah, they
Joyce
did.
and
Yeah,
all,
yeah,
and all the likes of today's heavyweights, right? So even in 2012, the right hand was landing on Zhang. I think when you look at a Wilder and you look at the Southpaw versus Orthodox, when he fought Luis Ortiz, that right hand fits down the middle like a cannon. And I think unless Zhang can put it on him and put him on the back foot, because from watching Parker versus Wilder, I think what he did best was putting him on the back foot
yeah,
and negating that right hand, not allowing him to land it, rolling underneath it, and all the things that he did. I can see Zhang getting hit with that. I don't think anyone gets up after being hit with that. But the other problem is how done is Wilder? Because obviously this ayahuasca thing, where's his mindset at? I think he's changed coaches again from, was it Malik
Oh,
Scott back to the old one?
has he? I didn't know that. All
The
right,
thing that
okay.
I like, yeah, from what I understand, I mean, the thing that I like best about Wilder is that when you're watching with Malik Scott, a lot of their training is focused around trying to land the right hand. So using the lead hand in order to get that right hand down the middle. It didn't feel for me against Parker he used it particularly well because he threw it enough times, it didn't land. He didn't even seem to think to change it up. Do you put it downstairs? Do you throw the right uppercut instead? It sort of seemed the same repetitive right hand. But against someone like Zhang who does get hit, it is a very
Yeah,
dangerous punch to get hit by, especially from
yeah,
Wilder. I always say in 100 years' time there won't be another Wilder. It's a God-given gift, that power. So
100%. Yeah, for me anyway, I can see that right hand landing at some point. I feel, yeah, it's just like you were saying about that Ortiz fight. I could see Zhang kind of dominating Wilder through the rounds, and then all of a
mhm.
sudden, bang, it's over. But saying that, we didn't
Yeah,
see that versus the Parker fight. It never came, but we didn't know where his mindset was, like you were saying with the ayahuasca, and he was all zen, which
mm,
was is very unlike him. And yeah, it's interesting to see if you'll come out more aggressive in this fight and actually, really want to go for the knockout and take more risks. But
yeah,
interesting fight, interesting fight. And I guess the other one we've got is Dubois versus Hrgovic as well. And Dubois kind of coming back into form after his loss to Usyk, and Hrgovic. He's still looking for that big fight. This is probably the biggest fight he's got so far. And
yeah.
how do you kind of see that one going down, Francis? Is that going to be kind of Dubois continuing, or can Hrgovic
I'm,
actually make his mark?
I'm going to go off the top of my head from what I can remember. So I think Dubois loses to Usyk, and then he has something like 7 fights up until now. Don't quote me exactly; I might be wrong on that.
Yeah,
I never understood why they gave Dubois Usyk. I thought it was, for someone they're trying to market as this big punching heavyweight, to give him someone like Usyk and Joe Joyce was strange for me. I almost thought building it would be better. But when you actually look at his record, he has actually fought a lot of times. However, I think Hrgovic is kind of one of those ones that sort of slides under the radar a little bit. I think he might shock a lot of people because Daniel Dubois does punch incredibly hard, but he's not necessarily the biggest or best mover, if you know what I mean. He's almost shunting power versus snapping power, if that kind of makes sense. So
Yeah.
either way, I think someone's getting hurt.
Hmm.
Dubois looked phenomenal against. Well, Jarrell Miller is not necessarily your
Yeah.
best opponent, but I thought the spite and I think he stopped him in the 12th round, the last 10 seconds or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Phenomenal again. So I think that's interesting. I think that's a
Yeah.
good
No,
fight, a good fight to watch.
I could see a knockout, or I could also see it being kind of a going the full 12 as well. Because Hrgovic, he is
Hmm.
quite he's a durable guy as well, isn't he? He can, you saw that in that Zhang fight. He took some absolute bombs off Zhang, and he just still managed to keep
Hmm.
going somehow. Even that Australian guy he faced, I always forget his name. Joshua's sparring partner, McKean, Hrgovic McKean. I don't know if
Yeah.
you saw that fight. McKean also landed some huge bombs on Hrgovic, and Hrgovic still managed to come back and get the knockout. I think it was like a late stoppage as well. But yeah, I know I'm looking forward to
Hmm.
that fight as well. I think it should be interesting. And what about the other fights in the card? Is there any ones you're kind of keeping an eye out for that, or?
Yeah, it'd be wrong of me to say there's any. I haven't particularly concentrated on too much. I'm a bit of a recently. I've become a bit of a fanboy. I sort of tend to watch the bigger ones and leave the sort of bottom. But again, do you know what? It reminds me of the UFC and Bellator tried it many years ago, where they cross promoted fights and they tried to, our best is going to fight your best and see who wins. And I really like the idea of that. I think it makes boxing more interesting, especially with MMA. The best fight the best. Sometimes with boxing, you end up with this kind of 50s this split, money that, who fights who. So it's nice to see people come from either side and do that kind of thing. So I think that's going to be good fun.
Yeah, no, it should be good. I think I had obviously Matt on the channel before, and we were talking about this. We are just saying,
Yeah,
kind of these concepts. These concepts are good for boxing, and I think it needed it. And
fantastic.
no, I think more stuff like this is going to help. And maybe bring back things like the World Boxing Super Suit, like the tournament kind of stuff as well.
Yeah,
Maybe that
yeah,
might be a good idea to kind of bring back, and or USA versus the UK or some, stuff like that. I think it helps boxing, and obviously with the Saudis now pouring the money in, it really helps
yeah. Oh boy.
with these kind of great
Yeah.
events. So no, it's good overall. But we'll move on to you're a big UFC fan, Francis, and you're really interested in mixed martial arts as well, and train guys as well. And obviously Conor McGregor's back in the summer against Chandler, and I think everyone's kind of been waiting for this. And obviously, this is a boxing channel, but you can't help but
Hmm.
get drawn into the UFC madness sometimes. What's your thoughts on Conor McGregor coming back against Chandler? I've watched a bit of Chandler. I know he used to be in Bellator. Is it more of a wrestling background he has?
Yeah, I mean he's an incredibly violent human being. I mean, if you look at some of his fights he's had, if you go back and watch the days of Bellator, unbelievable. Even when he came to the UFC, the fights with Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, he kicked the face off Tony Ferguson, which I'm sure you've probably seen.
Yeah.
The biggest difficulty I think with any time somebody comes back is what was their life like during the time they spent out. And I think Khabib talked a lot about Conor McGregor breaking his leg, how when you take time out, the body isn't as hardened anymore. How does Conor McGregor come back? But the thing they've done very well is I think that Michael Chandler is a custom-built opponent for McGregor. McGregor fought
Hmm.
Chad Mendes for the interim title. What am I talking about? Welterweight title. Sorry, not welterweight title. Lightweight or the one below
Featherweight,
it. I
was
can't
it?
remember the name. Featherweight title. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one. So they fight and it's custom built. You've got a stocky, heavy wrestler, very powerful, and there's a really interesting problem Michael Chandler has. So when he gets into a gunfight, he starts throwing punches, hands get dropped, and a lot of the time he's getting caught with shots. So Dustin Poirier caught him with a really nice check hook when he dropped his lead hand. And I think stuff like that, because McGregor is so capable when it comes to sort of hitting with precision. Watch Eddie Alvarez fight, for example. I think McGregor is probably the best starter in the first round you've ever seen. And I could really see McGregor coming out and stopping Michael Chandler with not I'm going to say ease because no fight is easy, but I
Like
think
a Jose Aldo
McGregor's
kind
just
of thing, or do you think it's a stretch too far?
somebody. McGregor has that thing. I don't know, and I'm sure you'll know this. You watch boxing, you've done boxing for a very long time. There is a thing that somebody has. It's an aura, something to them, and McGregor has that thing. You know, he said it best. He said the traffic is really bad in New York. McGregor, there must be a McGregor show in town. You know, who doesn't want to watch that guy fight? It's the same as the days of Mayweather. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, interesting.
I think he comes back and does the job.
Oh, no, I'm interested just to see how he gets on. Obviously, like that broken leg was horrific.
Mm,
And speaking about the guy that did that, Dustin Poirier, he's the one guy in the UFC I always make sure to watch his fights. I think he is an unbelievable fighter, brilliant boxer as well. Southpaw just.
phenomenal.
And we were talking about him just before we came on, and yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on him, Francis. I just I love watching him, and now obviously I'm obviously a boxing guy, so I think that says a lot. The fact I love watching Dustin Poirier, but yeah, what's your thoughts on him?
Mm. I just think you can't not love Dustin Poirier. You know, he's your epitome of a warrior. He's the gladiator in the Colosseum. That guy does everything you could ever dream of. You know, when he fought was it Saint Denis the other day? I can't pronounce his name properly. You know, he gets taken down, he gets
Yeah,
beaten up a bit, and he comes back out of nowhere and just knocks him out in incredible fashion. I think especially in a 5 round fight, someone like Dustin Poirier is always dangerous. You know, when he fought Dan Hooker beat him half to death, and he seemed to come back out of nowhere and do the same back to Dan Hooker. But for me, I like Dustin Poirier as a family man as well. I think that's incredible. I like watching him
hmm
train. I think his boxing coach Dyer Early, as we talked about before,
yeah,
I'm a massive fan of. I think that guy, the way he's sort of, there's another guy, I think it's Johnny Eblen who fights in Bellator, and the things he's done with that guy's hands as well is just phenomenal. So unfortunately, when it comes to fighting Makachev, it's not looking too good. I think it's a dangerous game, especially Dustin Poirier has a terrible habit of pulling guillotines, and I think when you're wrestling against the cage with the Dagestani, you have to be so careful. The best person that's ever done against the Dagestani is McGregor. You keep them in the middle of the ring, and you don't let them back you up. And when they do back you up against the cage, it's trouble time. So, but I think it's going to be Dustin Poirier's last fight ever, I think, and it's his last chance at ever getting the 155-pound title. So, um, I'd love to see him win it. I think that would be an incredible goodbye. Do I see him doing it? Hmm,
no,
maybe not.
that's a shame. I would
No.
love to see him do it. Um,
Hmm.
Interestingly enough, Francis, that was one of the questions about that fight, like about how that fight plays out between Poirier and Makachev. So, are you kind of thinking that Makachev gets him on the cage and just kind of wrestles him and beats him up there, like kind of similar to Khabib did to him?
Yeah, the best way to dictate an MMA fight, in my opinion, is who dictates where the fight is. So, say you've got a good wrestler versus a good grappler. The wrestler can decide whether it goes to the ground or it stays standing up. Makachev strikes and wrestles well, so he gets to decide whether it's going to be on the floor or it's standing up. If that makes some sense, so he
Right.
dictates how it goes, and I think that's the difficulty. Is he will be able to take Dustin Poirier down. He'll be able to put him where he wants him to tire him out to do all these things. So it's difficult for him to avoid being taken down. How does he deal with that? I mean, if he can stop him from taking him down, then it's a much harder night, right? But I just don't
Yeah.
see him. He has a tendency to almost want people to take him down. It's weird, but I want him to win. I'd love to see him win.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think it would be a great, because I think was he like interim champion, I believe, but he was never the full
He beat Max
champion,
Holloway for the
Poirier.
interim championship. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, speaking about
yeah,
Max Holloway,
probably
that
one of the
finish he got as well, that was unbelievable. I only saw it. I saw it
yeah.
like the next day, and yeah, unbelievable finish. Like, was it like 4 seconds left or something? Crazy,
There's
crazy
a
knockout as well.
something people often kind of missed from that. If you watch it, is he points at the floor, but the first thing he does when he points at the floor is he tucks his chin in his chest. And if you watch Gaethje is still chin in the air over the top of Max Holloway. Max Holloway is taking his head off the centre line as he's throwing it with his chin down, and Gaethje's head's up here somewhere. And it was, of course, a fantastic knockout, but it was the fact that Max Holloway almost locks himself down and then does it. He did it again in another fight, and I can't remember the name of the guy. You know, he tucks the chin in the chest and goes to
Yeah,
war. And I think that
yeah.
was kind of missed, unfortunately, but it was such a clever part of what he's doing.
Uh-huh. And I guess speaking about that, like, in terms of like their striking or their boxing ability. What guys in the UFC do you think would actually do quite well in boxing? Obviously, Max Holloway, he's probably a prime example of a guy that would do okay. But who else do you think would actually get on in boxing?
It's a very tough debate because you can take a guy like Uriah Faber, for example, really good example actually. He fought a guy called Jason, and I can't remember his surname. He fought him in a boxing match, and you realise just how
Yeah.
bad guys at fighting MMA are at boxing. If I was to pick someone, I think McGregor had the best crossover boxing. I think no one can deny that, right? But then I
Hmm.
think Elia Tapura, who recently knocked out was Volkanovski, I think he probably has some of the most fundamentally put together from the base, the defense, to where his hand positioning is, how he puts combinations together, the body work, for example. I think I think Tapura has got to be one of the best at the moment. Um,
Okay.
Max Holloway absolutely as well. But boxing for MMA is just such a different thing to boxing. It's a different range. It's the way you catch punches. Everything about it is so different. So it's so
Yeah.
hard to say who would transfer best, right?
Yeah.
Ngannou, actually, we'll take that. Ngannou had the best.
There you go. Yeah, of course. He obviously knocked down Tyson Fury. So no, it makes sense to pick him. But what do you think
Yeah.
about Ngannou now? Do you think he should stick in boxing, or do you think he should go back to MMA?
So he's going to fight MMA again, I guess. I think he has a contract with the PFL, right? But
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right. Yeah.
you know better than anybody when it comes to fighting, you wanna make money. Money fighting is a money sport. It's for nothing less. Of course, winning titles and doing all this stuff is good, but if somebody said to you, you can fight in a small hall and make £1 million and never win a world title, you'd probably do it, right? So why is the financial incentive for Ngannou to go back and make 300 grand a fight when he's just made 10 million a fight? So
Hmm.
it
No, no.
makes no
Yeah, I
sense to
agree.
me why you'd want to fight in MMA. It's
Yeah,
pittance
no, that.
compared to what you'd get if you fought in a boxing ring, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking about that, what just interest. Obviously, I guess we'll just get onto the questions because we actually got one, which I was just going to ask you that question. Which I got. These are all through Instagram, guys. So we'll go. This is the Q&A now, guys. So, and one of the questions was, who do you prefer coaching, boxers or mixed martial artists?
Ooh. Boxing only because ooh, that's a hard one. I'd say boxing, and the reason being is that I think I've trained people so much more for boxing matches than I've done for boxing matches, kickboxing, Muay Thai fights, and all sorts of stuff. I don't deal with the kicking, the wrestling, or the grappling aspect. I only deal with the hands. But I remember the first time I trained a guy to fight in small ounce gloves. It was the weirdest experience because I think I spent something like 15 to 20 hours just watching specifically small glove fights. To see what works, what
Hmm.
doesn't work. BKFC's become so interesting because the way you fight a bare knuckle fight compared to a boxing match is a whole different thing. So I like boxing because I love defense. I think watching someone slip punches, roll, shift their feet, I think it's one of the most
Yeah,
interesting things you could ever watch. So for me, it would be boxing all day long. Um, yeah, I just it's just so
you
much more
prefer it. Yeah,
interesting to teach people, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, let's do it. I guess we kind of touched on this earlier, but I'll ask it again. Does Crawford have any chance versus Canelo?
puncher's chance.
Awesome. Thoughts on Ryan's failed tests? Obviously, he popped twice for that.
Well,
Can't can't remember what the steroid's called. It begins with an O. I remember it's like a
yeah, Osterine. It's
Ostarine.
the
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to use the terminology because I don't know if we can swear on her or not. But I think it's often described as pregnant woman's urine or something like that. It's
All
full
right.
of certain hormones to bring your testosterone. It's the same as Conor Ben, right?
Oh yeah. I believe so.
But then, from what I understand today, one of Ryan Garcia's tests came back negative. Maybe
Yeah, for one of them
I'm,
was like
yeah,
your body naturally produces it, but the other one doesn't. That ostracine,
yeah,
that one doesn't produce it. So it doesn't look good, personally. I think they're trying to prove basically it came from a supplement that he used. So they're trying to get
hmm
that evidence. But uh, for me, it kind of looks like he probably did cheat, just kind of going off those tests. And it's a shame because he put on obviously an incredible performance. Obviously, there's the whole weight thing. That's a whole other debate. But the performance from Ryan was very good against Haney. You can't deny
Oh,
it.
phenomenal.
But you know, if this B sample comes back and he's clearly cheated, uh, I don't know really where he goes from here. Yeah, it's everyone can come back. You see like Jarrell Miller, for example. Somehow he's managed to come
Canelo.
back. Canelo as well. There's countless of guys over the years,
But
but
it really baffles me because when you watch the UFC, for example, I don't know if you ever watch UFC Countdown. When you turn up on fight week, they give you all of your supplements in a sealed bag. They're given to you by the company itself. I think it's when it was USADA, right? So you can't really fight week say, "Oh, I was given a tainted supplement," because you're intentionally given the supplement. So it's strange to me with boxing why you wouldn't have some sort of way of saying, "Here's what you can take, here's what you can't take, and we will
yeah,
provide it to you to inevitably stop this kind of thing," right? So it doesn't look good, but I still think that for me that was one of the greatest upsets in boxing history. I was completely wrong in every way. I thought Haney would jab the
yeah,
face off him, and obviously Garcia comes out and smashes him to pieces. So I
yeah.
was more wrong than I've ever been.
I was the same. I thought Haney was gonna completely outbox him as well, but I think just the power of Ryan
Mm.
was evident. He's just so much more powerful than Haney, and you could tell. I, I and I've talked about this before, and then I felt Haney was actually winning the rounds in between, but then all of a
Hmm.
sudden Ryan would just land one punch, and then the momentum obviously just swung in his favor, especially when he got the knockdowns. And yeah, it was like I said, it's a real shame it's come to him failing this drugs
Yeah,
test. And in a way, I kind of hope he does get his name cleared, but it just doesn't seem likely. And you know, I, I don't really like any cheat in the sport, if I'm being honest. I'm kind of
no,
get them out. Um, yeah, so we'll see what happens. Innocent until proven guilty. I guess that's the kind of the way I look at it. But and what other question? So, who's your pound for pound top 10 after the weekend? So, I guess after Canelo and Inoue fought this weekend, who do you have?
ooh, how can we get 10? Let's see. I'm going to start off with Inoue number one, Canelo number two, Crawford number three. That's a tough one. I feel like pound for pound becomes controversial because it ends up who
Yeah,
you
yeah.
like and who you don't like. But
Usyk,
those would be my three. I think, yeah, four. I'd probably go Usyk. I think, and then
and then Bivol, Beterbiev, maybe, or
yeah, I'd say that's fair. I wouldn't, I would never add in anybody like a Joshua or anyone like that. I think after Joshua's last two wins, everyone's kind of singing his praises, but to me, they weren't particularly all that impressive. I think he was custom built to beat Ngannou and custom beat to beat Otto Wallen, right? But yeah, if I was to go for five, that would be my five. I think
okay.
10 would be. I'm too indecisive. I can never decide.
No, yeah, it's mine's constantly changing as well, and it's
Hmm.
usually when they fight. This is the thing, For example, if Crawford was also fighting this weekend, it might be a bit more of a debate.
Hmm.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, after he fights, what everyone thinks. And then we've got a couple, I think, from some of your mates. Is Kyle the
Uh,
best fighting man you've ever trained?
of course,
Of course.
of course.
And the last one we just got was no questions, just to say Francis, one of the best boxing coaches in Berkshire, great guy. And then he just said can't wait. So that was Muay Thai Beast, whoever that is. I don't know if you know him.
Man, what a sweetheart. That's lovely.
Nice, awesome.
I'll take that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to leave it to end this. But Francis, let me know what your ambitions are for the Fisher Boxing Academy going forward. And as a boxing coach, what do you want to do going forward, and what's your ambitions?
For me, it kind of changed over time. So originally, the idea would be I would have loved to have trained someone who would achieve something at the highest level. But the more time I've spent around boxing, the more you realize how much of an evil sport it is. I've trained guys for fights they've lost or won, and then I've never heard from them again. And I think for me, I'm too emotionally invested in people, and that kind of ends up spiting me, right? So my biggest thing and one of the greatest achievements in my life has been the effect that boxing's had on people. You know, they come here to me, they train, their life becomes better, they're fitter, their mind's stronger. For me, I would like to create a space that makes people effectively better mentally, physically, and all the rest of that sort of stuff. So if I can create machines, you know, like soldiers kind of thing, that to me is a great life achievement. You know, I've trained some people who were, and I mean this respectfully, awful when they came to me, and now you know they've had 5 or 6 fights and they're winning, and you know to see the effect it has on their life is I think one of the greatest things. You know, boxing, you become stronger mentally, the fortitude, you know, all the stuff that comes with it. So originally I wanted to train someone to do something big. Now I want to train your average individual to become a machine. I think is the aim, right? But boxing gym
That's,
coming soon.
oh,
Um,
nice.
but I said this in a recent video, and I mean it wholeheartedly. I'm 29 years old and 30 next week. I think I need another 10 years of boxing coaching to really feel like I understand it to the depth that I need to, if that makes sense. So maybe if we're still around at 40 years old, get me back on
No, 100%, man.
something like that. Would.
No, and that's great to hear as well. Just, the fact you're actually wanting to make an impact in people's lives, and you clearly do, man. Even through your content as well, and I've always loved listening to your thoughts on the sport and MMA as well, and you know you can tell you're a really insightful guy in the sport as well. You do know your stuff, but
Thank you, man.
you're very honest as well. You're you've still got more to learn as well. I've got so much to learn
Mm.
myself, and I think it's just the fact you're so honest about it, Francis, and I think that's why people enjoy listening to you and respect you. So, and I'm sure, man, you'll definitely go on to great things. And like you said, maybe in
Thank you
10
so
years'
much.
time we can get back on and we'll see where we're at that point. But I think you can be proud with what you've done so far and just keep going. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see how you progress too over the coming years. But
No, thank you so much.
no problem, man. I really appreciate you coming on. I know we've been saying we wanted to do this for a while, so yeah. Let the guys know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Fisher Boxing Academy, named after my surname, so it kind of has to be done properly, right? You can't put some badness on your surname. But yeah, Fisher Boxing Academy on Instagram is going to be the best one. Um, of course, as well TikTok. Recently, my TikTok content I haven't done as much kind of breakdowns and stuff because every time I do it, it gets flagged. So, um, you know, you use a video, it gets unoriginal content, and I get banned for a month. I get demonetized. I think I've been demonetized about 7 times now. So that's 7 months without kind of the ability to use it as an additional income, which is kind of annoying. But um, Instagram is going to be the best. And one thing people can always do if they want, and there's something that I get on almost a daily basis, you can send me videos of your boxing, and I'll chop them up and I'll break down what I think you can do better, and if there's anything I can add to help you. And I require nothing for that. I just enjoy doing it. So that's something people are more than welcome to do.
That's brilliant, man. No, well, thanks so much for coming on. It's great to hear all your thoughts and great to finally do this as well, man. So yeah, really appreciate it, man.
God bless. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, man. All right. Thanks so much for joining, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.